Every once in a while, something mundane throws me off. Something that my mind had previously smoothed over and accepted as average suddenly stands out. On the same stretch of road, two houses, each with a pair of stone lions at the mouth of their driveways. Where did that tradition come from? Why do we still do it? Those questions led me back through time and across continents. I wound up in a place I didn't expect and learned about an event that shaped the cultural identity of a nation. I learned about stray musket balls, guardian statues, and cursed paintings. All because some people still have stone lions at the front of their driveways. Wild. The Napoleonic Wars ranged across Europe for roughly 15 years. Bloody conflicts fought over shifting alliances around France and their self-crowned emperor. At the forefront of Napoleon's strategy for control was the idea of decimating the British military ships that stood in the channel between France and England. The goal was to muster the naval forces for an assault on England. Admiral Horatio Nelson, an experienced soldier with a damaged eye and a missing arm, was able to prevent a French commander named Villeneuve from reaching his destination. This resulted in the Battle of Trafalgar, which took place October 21st, 1805, west of Cape Trafalgar, in between the Strait of Gibraltar and Cadiz. The battle consisted of 33 combined French and Spanish ships against 27 British ships. It is at this battle that Nelson is believed to have told his men, "England expects that every man will do his duty." Collingwood, another British admiral, led half of the ships to attack the rear, while Nelson and his ship attacked the front. This broke with British naval tradition of the time by splitting into smaller groups instead of attacking in a line formation. Admiral Dumanoir for the French and Spanish launched a failed counterattack, but the strategic maneuvers executed by Admiral Nelson won them the day. Then, from the French ship Redoutable, a French sniper fired from the mast. It struck Admiral Nelson in the chest. The French and Spanish lost between 19 and 20 ships to the British. In addition, they also lost 14,000 men, half of whom were captured alive. Roughly 1,650 British were killed or wounded, yet somehow, they didn't lose any of their ships. Before dying under the care of a surgeon below deck of his ship, the Victory, Nelson is quoted as saying, "Now I am satisfied. Thank God I have done my duty." 3 hours after being shot, Nelson died. The Battle of Trafalgar was a decisive win for the British that cemented their naval prowess and helped to destroy Napoleon's plans to invade England through naval power. A great battle with lasting impact. (1826), Westminster, England. Thanks to the Charing Cross Act, a committee with its eyes set on clearing out and redeveloping a large area in Westminster selected architect John Nash for the job. He developed plans that included the construction of a new building for the Royal Academy of Arts. Sadly, he would never see his work completed, because he died not long after in 1835. The responsibility of overseeing the construction of the new square in Westminster passed to another renowned architect, Charles Barry. In 1835, a contest was held by the Nelson Memorial Committee for proposals for a monument to commemorate Admiral Nelson. Architect William Railton's proposal, which included a massive Corinthian column with a statue of Admiral Nelson on top, with 4 sculpted lions at its base, was accepted. and the column and statue were up by 1843. After all was said and done, Trafalgar Square, named after the famous battle, was finally opened in 1844. The intricate bronze reliefs that depicted the feats and eventual death of Admiral Nelson were not completed until 10 years later, in 1854. Then there were those pesky lions. Thomas Milnes was commissioned to make the lions in 1858, but after his stone models were completed, peace, war, vigilance, and determination, the project was ultimately given to Edwin Landseer, an artist who had become well known for being able to paint animals. Landseer knew that he needed something to base his sketches on, so he had a recently deceased lion brought to him so he could begin his study. In addition to waiting for a cast of a real lion be sent from Turin, something happened. The lion he was using for his sketches started to do what a corpse often does. It started decomposing. This meant that by the time he got to the paws, he didn't have much to work with. So, he had to base them off cat's paws instead. In 1867, Landseer's lions were finally installed at the base of Nelson's column. A man who was famed for painting animals that looked so lifelike they could leap out of the frame, suddenly had to sculpt 4 lions with that same sense of life. Landseer rose to the challenge and created sculptures that are still marveled at today. We'll get back to Edwin Landseer, but first, a quick question. Why lions? Across continents and across cultures, lions have always been there. It's not often you come across something so totally ingrained in humankind that you cannot find a clear source of where a concept came from. Whether they come from Egypt, Greece, Assyria, Babylon, China, England, or Italy, lions are meant to convey strength, regalness, and protection. The question of what is the origin of a pair of stone lions becomes increasingly more complex the more you peer into it. Lions, it seems, have been used in architecture for thousands of years. Their placement on gateways also goes far back into the past. The concept of having 2 separate lion sculptures outside of important buildings, acting specifically as guardians, has some roots in India, then into Southeast Asia, and was adopted in China. It's these foo dogs that I believe hold the strongest potential for being the inspiration for the lion sculptures that slowly started appearing in the West. Shishi statues, or stone lions, were created with dual purposes. The male lion has his paw on top of a ball, which is meant to represent the elements, or the material, while the female lion has a cub under her paw, which symbolizes life, or the spiritual. What is England's association with lions? One of the most famous connections that the British Isles have to lions is Richard I, or as he became known, Richard the Lionheart. He is attributed with helping to develop the Royal Arms of England, which shows 3 yellow lions. The Tower of London, at one point in time, housed the Royal Menagerie, which was a collection of wild and exotic animals gifted to the crown by other nations. There are not only written records that show that lions were kept there, but excavations of the moat surrounding the Tower of London revealed 2 lion skulls. Across cultures and across time, lions have always been there. It makes sense that 4 lions would be chosen to guard the base of Nelson's column. When you drive down a road and see a house with stone lions out front, they didn't just appear there. Someone had to plant them in the ground to keep watch, to make a statement, or both. The bronze lions that Edwin Landseer crafted took a long time to complete, but he finished them. He did not leave Nelson's column without its courageous cats. But the same can't be said about the paintings he left uncompleted upon his death. Edwin Landseer was a prolific painter. His skill at painting animals came from his extensive study on anatomy and examining the underlying structure of living things. Not only that, but it was said of Landseer that he could draw with his left hand, as well as his right, simultaneously. A truly skilled artist. Before his death in 1873, he requested that his friend, John Everett Millais, another skilled painter, complete 3 unfinished paintings that were on easels collecting dust in his art studio. Millais' son wrote The Life and Letters of Sir John Everett Millais, President of the Royal Academy, which is split into multiple volumes. In Volume 2, Sir John's son writes the following regarding the 3 unfinished paintings. Landseer left behind him 3 large unfinished pictures, Finding the Otter, Nell Gwyn, and the Dead Buck, all on the easels in his studio, and his dying wish was that Millais and no one else should complete them. The work was accordingly taken up as a sacred trust, and the result, I venture to think, justified the confidence reposed in the artist. Facing death, Landseer trusted no one but Millais to complete these 3 paintings. The first is a painting called Finding the Otter, or Digging Out the Otter, or Otter Hunting. The biographer writes, Digging Out the Otter was left in so imperfect a state that at least 2/3 of it, including the figure, the horses, and most of the hounds, had to be painted in, the hounds being indicated only by charcoal lines. Yet so cleverly was this accomplished that I think it would puzzle even artists to say for a certainty which was Landseer's work and which Millais'. This painting can be viewed at Christie's.com, which is a large art auction company. The second painting mentioned is Nell Gwyn, of which the biographer writes, In the portrait of Nell Gwyn, life-size, she is seen passing through an archway on a white palfrey. This picture, in which the horse alone was finished, was bought by one of the Rothschild family and given to my father to complete. One morning, a celebrated art critic called and was much impressed by the work. Ah, to be sure, he said, going up close and examining a deerhound which almost breathed in the foreground. How easily one can recognize Landseer's dogs. Wonderful, isn't it? Yes, it is wonderful, remarked Millais, lighting another pipe. I finished painting that dog yesterday morning, and I've done the whole of it myself. This painting resides at the Tate Gallery, but cannot be viewed by their website. Luckily, there is a black and white rendition of the painting in the same volume of the biography. The final painting mentioned that Millais completed was called The Dead Buck. Millais' son had this to say. The park and trees forming the background of the dead buck, Millais drew mainly from nature, while following as far as possible the lines of Landseer's sketch, on the back of which I see written Glen Feshie. This picture went to America. Glen Feshie is a beautifully picturesque area in Scotland that Landseer frequented and took inspiration from. I searched and searched for an image of this third painting, but couldn't seem to find it. I had a problem. A dead buck problem. see, Edwin Landseer painted many paintings that had to do with deer, bucks, stags, etc. Sometimes alive, sometimes dead. I scoured the internet and even went so far as to email research departments at the Art Institute of Chicago, the Philadelphia Museum of Art, the Met Museum, the Tate Gallery, the Royal Art Academy, the Smithsonian, and the National Art Library at the Victoria and Albert Museum. But in the responses I received, it appears nobody knows where this final Landseer painting ended up. A true mystery. But Landseer didn't just leave a mystery behind. He left behind a peculiar legacy. Homo proponit, sed Deus disponit. Man proposes, God disposes, is a painting that Landseer painted in response to the disastrous Franklin expedition that attempted to explore uncharted waters in the Northwest Passage of the Canadian Arctic. The Erebus and the Terror set off in 1845, but became stuck in the ice. The 129-man crew was lost. The Erebus was found in 2014, and the Terror was found not long afterwards in 2016. This painting, depicting polar bears picking through wreckage and human remains, resides at Royal Holloway College, where it has gained a very specific reputation. Students believed at one point in time that it was cursed. Back in the 70s, a student outright refused to sit beside it during an exam, so it was covered with a Union Jack flag. That tradition persisted. The curse of the painting has evolved over the years to include madness if one stares into the eyes of the polar bears. It seems Edwin Landseer's animals live on long after his death. I set out to understand why people put stone lions at the ends of their driveways, and ended up with far more than I bargained for. History into art. Art into myth. 3 hours. 3 yellow lions. 3 unfinished paintings. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.